We believe in this group, in the power of story.
But it didn't work for me.
And it was what made my grandmother tell me all the time, son, you're blessed.
But it saved my life. It redeemed me. It's the way God found me.
All right. Hey, welcome to the reboot of the Portland Stories podcast. My name is Tony Kriz, and this reboot's going to be an extension of a community that has been meeting together for several decades here in Portland, particularly in Northeast Portland. It's a multiracial group of people who love God, trying to figure out life and to do so together, and realizing it's only that when we are together that there is any hope to figure out life. And today I'm with some of my dear friends and mentors. I got Larry Anderson up top there. Larry Anderson, former police officer here in Portland, Oregon, and a pastor to all of us. There, down there on the bottom, that's Bob Wall. Bob, who's former fire chief here in Portland, and then Pops in the Seahawks hat. That's Leonard Lamberth, who works with Portland Transit. So I got transit, police, and fire on the screen today. Basically, we're going to take over the entire city. We got all we need. And speaking of fire, we are coming up on close to 1 million acres burned in Oregon over the last few days. We have over 500,000 people displaced from their homes and evacuated and on the run. We have many people who have died. We have entire farms that have been destroyed. We've got habitats. We've got creatures great and small that are on the run and have died. There's great destruction going on, and that's just Oregon. We're not even talking about California and Washington, all the other things that are happening. And so today we thought we would talk a little bit about what's happening with the wildfires here in Oregon and how we as people of faith respond to that. Before we dive into sort of the nuts and bolts, anybody got anything they want to say?
Well, Tony, I think it's really great that we're finally going to be able to begin these conversations and from a perspective of men living together in faith. And I think that we've talked about it for a long time. And so I'm kind of really excited to actually see it happening. And it's unfortunately that we've got to come at a time as such as this, where we have so many things going on in the world that's negative. And where do people get their hope from? I mean, how do we maintain balance in the midst of all this, the pandemic, the protests in the street, the emphasis that has caused the protests. Now we're dealing with wildfires that are threatening people's livelihoods and their lives. So it's really time that we begin to have this conversation. I think it's appropriate for us to do this, and I'm just glad that we are now able to do that.
Bob, you got a thought? Start us out.
Yes, I look forward to hearing from all of you and from sharing from my heart and from my kind of understanding of catastrophe, of trauma, of fire. It's kind of my middle name. Fire's my middle name, I used to say. And then we laugh about it, but this is no joke. And so what we're going to share today is, it's not rehearsed. It's not, it's the truth, and it is real. And so I pray that what is said today is going to be helpful to someone who has questions or who is frustrated, afraid, anxious, angry about what's going on from a fire and other issues that we're dealing with today. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Pops.
Good morning, Tony. Being a native Oregonian, born and lived his whole life here, of course, I love my state and all the significance of the beauty of it that the Father has blessed us with, and then to see it go up, it is a little heart-wrenching, not only about the beauty of the forests and all that, but all the people impacted also, the lives lost, um, um, abilities for caring for their family in the future impacted. It's a lot. It can be overwhelming. And I think the body of believers in this state, or even those that are not, we have something to consider, and the fires they are speaking to us. Actually, I was out yesterday with Larry and another gentleman, and we wanted to do a hike, but because of the impact of the fires, we couldn't. But it gave us the opportunity to actually just ride around our state for a little bit, mainly in this area, Portland area, and our outer communities, and just to see how people are kind of shutting down too. I kind of noticed that. So anyway, I'm sure we'll get into it more in the conversation.
Yep.
So I look forward to this conversation today.
So right now it's like Larry said, that seems like the world's in chaos. Economics and protests and policing and race relations, and it's the pandemic. And yeah, right now, only thing we're talking about in Oregon is these fires. It seems like. I go on my Facebook feed, and everything is people talking about fires and who's on the run. And right now, I look at my window and I can't see the sky. I was south of town yesterday, and I couldn't see 300 yards in front of me, and that was tens of miles from any fire, but couldn't see because it's so overwhelming. And so, hey Bob, maybe we could just start out with you, since your middle name is Fire. Explain to us what's going on. Explain to us how a week ago we were talking about California being in trouble, and today we're talking about Oregon being in trouble. Like, what's going on?
Well, it's a combination, and I don't want to make it too simple, but it's a combination of the weather, the terrain, actually the beauty of Oregon is trees. And I was born in Oregon, raised in Oregon, spent a little time in California, but I'm back in Oregon again. But so I often say, or hear somebody say, in Oregon, trees grow like weeds. And in fact, I even belong to the Oregon Green Club in school. And keep Oregon green kind of thing. And anyway, so it is part of Oregon's legacy is trees. Well, when you get the drying out, the heat, the wind, the trees, all combined, and you have lightning and people. These fires start, and usually they start up in the top of mountains, because that's where the lightning strikes most often, and they burn up there, and then they go away. But what we have right now is a situation where all of the ingredients have come together to make for, I know people might not want to hear this, but an uncontrollable fire. We have fires meeting with other fires to make a bigger fire. And it is no joke. It is something that we've never seen in Oregon before.
Wow.
At this level. And we're setting records every day, bad records about numbers of fires, about acres and miles of fire. And and it's touching almost all of our lives. And so usually since 1966, when I started as a firefighter, when a fire started, you called the firefighters, they would come, they would put the wet stuff on the red stuff, and the thing would go out. And we would solve it, we'd turn around, leave, and everybody was happy. The situation right now in Oregon, you might not know this, but the fire managers ordered yesterday for many units to be pulled away from the fire lines because it wasn't defensible. And so here we have a fire that can't be put out. And so it only goes to show that sometimes we think, well, firefighters are on the scene. We've got 200 or 1,000 or 2,000 firefighters. They'll put this thing out. Well, it may not go out. And it may not go out until God causes a rain, a change in the weather. And right now, the wind has changed. And many people think, oh, okay, well, that's going to help. And yes, it is. However, it's going to change. The wind direction is going to change. We already know that. It's going to come off the ocean and go the opposite direction. And that could blow the fire in a new direction. So I could share more, but this is not a joke. So if you've got friends or family or people who live in a precarious position in the trees, make sure that they're taking precautions, and evacuations are being ordered. One is, watch out. 2 is get ready to leave. 3 is evacuate. And that's over a huge area already, 3 evacuations. So, I guess I want to paint a picture of truth and reality, and that's what we have right here. And I look out the window like Tony, you look out the window. I look at it right now, and my training says this is not good.
Right.
Now, every instinct in me, with training and reading the sky, says this is not good, and it hasn't. Fire hasn't reached my neighborhood, but I'm in the hills. I can just see trees everywhere, but it can. So prepare yourself, because these are signs that are obvious. Prepare yourself. And
Yeah, there's in these times where we have all these rhetorical debates, I just think it's so interesting that you can't just say that the fires aren't there, that it's fake, that we're making it up. Like we have to right now. We have to face reality. We have so many tricks to juggle truth, so we don't have to face reality every day. And right now we got to face reality. It is happening. It's happening all around us. So I hear that.
that's right.
I hear that we can't do anything about it. That right now they're pulling people back. That right now all of our knowledge and all of our human strength cannot stop this left to ourselves. Right now we are literally open-handed going, help.
That's right.
We cannot do this ourselves. We do not have the strength, the knowledge, the money to fix this. Help, right? And then the last thing I heard you say was that there's people in real trouble. And I know I spent all day yesterday on the phone, just calling people. Do you need help? Do you need me to come? Do you need help moving stuff? Amy and I have opened up our house to say, if you need a place to stay, come. We need to be opening our homes. We need to be acting like this is a time of real desperation.
Well, and more importantly, Tony,
Please.
who we're going to ask for help.
Right?
I mean, where are you going to go? And, usually when you throw your hands up, then, you look to another state or you look to another group and, come help me. Look, man, everybody is in trouble. I mean, and if you're not affected yet by the fire directly, look, I'm down on the coast breathing smoke, man. People are, we went out yesterday to just take a hike. Mount St. Helens was close, so we're driving around and the city is literally cut off. And it's like, who's going to help you? Nobody's going to help you because we're all in trouble. This is something that is happening in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of protests and riots in the street because of police abuse of power, something that I was associated with my profession for years.
Policeman.
This is added on to, in addition to, all the other unrest that's happening to us. This is bigger than any one thing that's going on, and people are trying to address it as if these are isolated incidents from each other. This is going on right now. Me and my wife and a couple of friends went to the coast and Seaside, and we were inundated with smoke to the point that they were telling us that we had to stay inside. It became a hazard. My hotel was sitting on the ocean front and we could not see the ocean. We saw the blood sun because of the smoke. And I have friends now that evacuate their homes. We're talking Oregon City, Salem. This isn't out in the woods somewhere. This is coming towards the urban areas where people live, and it's already affecting our lives. And to deny that is insanity. But yet we live in a culture that's been denying reality for years, starting with this protest we have against racism in this country and police brutality. We've been denying that for years. And we've been dealing with this ongoing civil unrest in our nation, actually throughout the world. And we have people who are still saying and not acknowledging that it's happening now. And that's in the middle of a pandemic that is killing people. And then now, in addition to those two things, now we have this, and it's almost like it suddenly happened. We have these outbreaks of fires that started in some faraway place that's called California somewhere, that's, by the way, been on fire for the last 2 years. And now that fire has reached Oregon, and is in Washington, and it's spreading. And so then I hear a retired fire chief say, and I believe he said that we've come to a point now where we cannot fight the fire, and we have to pull back and let something else determine the outcome. I think that's a little unsettling. I think if there was someone trying to get our attention, I think that we should pay attention now. Now, I listened to one of my local politicians on TV who I respect says, Mother Nature. Mother Nature is now reacting to our indifference or our being irresponsible of how we handle our resources. I would surmise that while we want to recognize Mother Nature, we want to deny our Father who is in heaven.
Creator.
Our Elohim, our Creator. And that we have denied and failed to recognize the significance of his existence in our lives. And we have denied it. And as a consequence of that, like you, Tony, you say, well, I don't think he directly caused it, but as a consequence of our denial of him, these things are now occurring that are out of our ability to even begin to address. And they're not going away simply because we want to ignore it. Like the pandemic, we want to deny it and ignore it. And guess what? It has not gone away. And the fact that we have said, well, a lot of people are affected, but only a few people are affected to the point where it's debilitating. Yeah, but that few people is deadly. I don't know about your lifetime, but in my lifetime, I've never seen anything this deadly so quickly. You know, we're not even talking about a year, and we have almost over 180,000 people that are dead. And people say, well, this is a pandemic. This is a pestilence, because not only has it affected us in our health, in our life, it's affected our ability to have a life. It's affected our economy. It's affected the way we do commerce. It's affected everything. That is the very definition of a pestilence. But to say pestilence, you have to acknowledge the Most High. And so our denial of that only exasperates what we're seeing around us every day. Now it's come to the point where you say, Tony, it cannot be denied. And now who do you call to help you in these circumstances when they are fighting for their survival? And so far, what I've heard in the public conversation, what I've heard in the political conversation, and what I've even heard among my friends is not satisfactory. We don't have any answers. We're at the end, and there's a lot of anxiety, and there's a lot of people unsettled, and there's a lot of civil unrest, and people have no hope and don't see any end in sight. And a lot of those are people who claim to be religious that are now speaking woes to everything. Is there any hope? Is there hope in the middle of all this? Hopefully that's what we can discuss among ourselves. This is a conversation that we've been having with ourselves, and hopefully we can bring that to a broader community.
Yes.
So I think that the state, the city in general is looking to the ecclesia, to the church for some direction. And we have a great opportunity. I think, Tony, you said it in meetings we've been in. We have a great opportunity right now in the midst of all this, in the midst of the fire, in the midst, what's going on. And I'm with you, Larry, it's not a pandemic. But in the midst of all of that, what is the response or the I won't say the message, because that sounds kind of, but what is the response from Ecclesia? What is this response from the church today to these things? The fire does not show any special attention to whether you're black or white, you're rich or poor, you're male or female. And so I know part of the topic was the fire today. And so some of that, it doesn't care. It's just all a part of it. It's going to devour what it's going to devour. It's going to take out, so the trees. So I was just going to say to Bob, and this is kind of off tab. So they live in tree houses when they live out in the trees. Okay, that was a joke. I shouldn't have said that. I know we're being serious. So that's what I wrote down. And yes, our state, our community, our citizens, they want an end to this. But it's amazing. We always want to rush to an end. We want to rush to what we think the end should be. We want the fires to stop so we can get back to our life. We want the cry out for, say, justice. And I will just say that, for justice, because we're tired of the injustice. Can we just all get along? Well, we always want to end to things, but there's a process to that. And many times we're not willing to wade through that process. And yes, it is devastating, the fires, to many families. I'm like you, Bob, and Larry, and you, Tony, have friends out there, tried to contact, are you okay? Anything I can do? So I think that's part of the response. The other response is, what's going to be the residual? There's going to be some more residual effect, just like from this pestilence. There's going to be some residual effect. How are we going to position ourselves along this journey? Because we're not at the end of it yet, along this journey as a body to lead people in reconciliation back to the Father. To me, that's what it's saying. How are we going to position? How are we going to hear the Father's voice in leading those back to reconciliation with the Father? And we know who that's through.
Yep. So Leonard, I heard some in what you're saying, that these things happen, and our natural response, because we are children, is all we want is pain relief.
Right.
When there's a moment, that not even to ask what does God want to show us right now? What does he want to teach us? What does he want to draw us into? What does he want to burn away in us? The chaff inside. What does he want to burn away in the midst of these crises, these trials, these traumas that are harming so many of our friends, our neighbors, our family? Like, what might God want to do inside of me? What might God want to be doing through me in the midst of these times? You guys, you're my uncles, you're my elders. Tell me, talk to me, help me.
Well, I would love to tell you and give you a very simple recipe for fixing this. And we will hear lots of quick fixes in the days and weeks and months for all of this. We're going to hear all of those things. But I believe that let's just stay with fire for a minute. The two things that are usually reported is how big is the fire, and number two, what is the damage to homes and lives? And let me just say, talk about homes for a minute. We value our homes very, very highly. Partially because it's the American dream, and everybody tries to own a home, and everybody wants a bigger home and a nicer home, etc. And so we report the number of structures, what we call it structures, so that we just make a number on it. So how many structures have been lost? And I think as a person of faith that believes in God, the God of creation, personally, that's what I believe personally, that that those things that burn up are not the most important things in life. In fact, what I think is more important, and this is just me, I'm not a preacher, I'm an old firefighter. Things that are most important are relationships, people to people, and individual relationship to our Creator. So right now we have a overabundant value of our homes, and so that's what hurts us, quote unquote, so much, is that you can't stop this fire quick enough before it reaches my home. Well, my niece has lost her home in the Sandy Am Canyon fire, and beautiful home, and it is gone. There's nothing left. And so, as Leonard mentioned, there's a kind of a cost of these things, the loss of these things, and I think that people are feeling hopeless across our country. I'll bet today every one of us will talk to someone who is just kind of empty of hope, and I think there is hope. Yesterday, in our neighborhood, there was a gathering of clothes and articles and things to gather and to be shipped by truck to the areas affected by these fires. So people will respond, and people will kind of show their heart out of service to one another. And I think that is a spark. I don't want to keep going back to the metaphor, but that's a spark of real hope to help one another. And so I don't want to paint a picture of complete doom because this fire condition is so big. There's still hope. There's still hope, and it will go out. Either God will, change the weather pattern and the rain will occur, or it will burn itself out. When it finally, comes to a point where it will burn itself out. In California, we used to say, defend until you're at the beach, and then, the fire will go out at the beach, and it'll burn to the Pacific Ocean in some cases. But
that's getting back to pain
yes, there
relief,
is.
pain remedy. And
Yeah.
Larry, like we're in this, man. This is a time for our minds to be renewed, for our hope to be rebirthed, for our understanding of our place in the world, the real place, not the pretend, not the pageantry.
Sure.
That we're told. Like this is time for real stuff. What do you think? Talk to me.
Well, I mean, first of all, what Bob talks about is the response to, pain relief as a consequence of the fact that we're in serious trouble. And how do we get in this trouble? And so it's not a question of, these things are happening. How did we get in this trouble? What has led us to this point where we are now suffering from all these things that are culminating into this one thing? Well, it's quite simply, we have denied him. Who am I talking about him? Our Father who art in heaven. We have flat out denied him. We don't consider him. He's a genie in a bottle, someone that panders to our will, someone who comes and saves us, rescues us from tragedy. But most of the time, we've ignored him. In fact, we've been flat out denying him. So now, as a direct and indirect consequence of that, we are subject to his judgment. And his judgment is not what we see in the movies. He's simply, because he's not an active part of who we are and who he is in our lives, we are susceptible to harm from the environment, all of our environment. There's no protection there. So this is what's happening. So rather than what do we do to alleviate and protect ourselves from what's happening, it is a return to him. How do we return to him? Is he a part of our conscious intellect through our belief in him? And how do we return to that? And how do we even have that discussion? People say, well, man, it's too late to have that discussion when the fire's raging. This is exactly when you need to have that discussion.
That's right.
Right.
Because everything you do about trying to stop the fire ain't happening. So it is a return to him that is a resolution, whether the fire goes out or not. Right. It is our acknowledgement of who he is supposed to be to us, and especially to those who say they believe in him and are part of the body. We have neglected our responsibility to honor and acknowledge him in our entire life, not our compartmentalized life where we just go to church on Sunday or where we have a religious experience. This is a direct and indirect response to our neglect to honor our Father with our lives and the way we live. We deny him. So now that all this is upon us to bring our attention back to him, I don't want to have the conversation about, how are we going to fix this or how are we going to relieve from this? We should be having this conversation about our Father and our returning to him by being obedient to his word, by understanding exactly what he has instructed us to do for such a time like this. Who is having that conversation?
Well, I think there's those out there. Go ahead. Go ahead, Larry.
This is what This is what the dialogue needs to be about. How do we return to our Father?
That's what I was trying to say, and thank you. You did an excellent job, both you and Bob, about it's about us returning to our Father. I think so. They are roadmaps for us, even in the midst of the disaster and everything that's going on. If we look at there are roadmaps to lead us back to the Father. The I would just say the church body today has built up walls that have prevented people who were hurting to get to the Mashiach, to see. They have built up walls of religion, I will just say that have separated.
Or irreligion.
Huh?
Or irreligion.
More ill religion than religion. You're right, Tony. To keep people who really would love to come back. It has gotten convoluted. It has become not so much work, but effort driven, all on your part. It's not about our Father's love for them. And so I think these are signs, but there's also, in the midst of all the smokiness, in the midst of all the disease right now, all the turmoil, all that's going on, we have been given a roadmap, and we've had it for a long time. Someone said this morning, many times we read the Bible, the Holy Scripture, I will just say that, but it also reads us. It also reads us. So I would just say, what's our response as those that are not just here with us, but those that would be listening? What will be your response? If you're outside of that, are you willing to, have some conversations with those and seek a reconciliation? But also, I think overall, I feel the Father is saying to us, stop the mess. Stop lying to yourself. Come on. I'm screaming for you that I love you. Even in the midst of everything, I love you. So I'll just put that out there.
All right. Well, one of the things that I'm aware of right now. So on the one hand, we need to be expressing love in all of its languages right now, right? We need to be making ourselves available. We need to be opening our homes. We need to be, as we can, giving money to when people need it. We need to be providing resources. We need to be on the phone, speaking words of affirmation. I care about you, thinking about you. Do you need anything? Can I help out? Like, we need to be using all the languages of love right now, mobilizing our families, talking to our kids about this stuff, making sure they are in the conversation. They're thinking about that people are suffering. There are entire towns in Oregon that are gone.
Yep.
They were there 2 days ago, and now they're gone. They're gone. Right? This is the world, and we need to be having these conversations, but also we need to be speaking. And right now, people want to talk. They got questions. They want to know what's going on. What holds together the fabric of the universe? Because right now it seems like that fabric is unraveling. And so, what do we say, Larry? What do we say?
So, Tony, you're very right. I tell people right now, during this pandemic, the question is, what has caused the problem? The problem has been our disobedience. It's a simple thing. It is our disobedience, our failure to recognize and hear what our Father has been speaking to us throughout his creation. Our disobedience has brought the consequence of judgment. And even in that judgment, we look for blame and causes, and we don't accept the righteousness of our Father. Now, this is an adult conversation. This is a hard thing to talk, especially in the midst of a pandemic of suffering. but it is the righteousness of our Father that brings our disobedience to this state. What kind of a father would he be if he let our unrighteousness go unchecked, not dealt with? And how does he deal with it? He brings judgment. There's a lot of us, like myself, who wants this to be over and want to say, I just want to get back to things normal. This is not going to be over, and it's not going to go back to normal as it was. This is a wake-up call for us to recognize that we have been disobedient. We have not listened to our Father. In fact, we have eliminated him from our daily lives. And we have erected these monuments to ourselves and believing that we can determine and control the outcomes and the things that touch our life through our wealth, through our occupations, and how quickly that can be consumed. And now we're looking for an explanation, a cause, and we have not returned to the word of my Father found in the scriptures and listened to what he has said to us about such a time as this. And to accept his righteous judgment. He has an absolute right to judge our behavior, our lawlessness. We live in a midst of civil unrest, and because of the injustices, we have now all taken ourselves to the street and become lawless. This is what this looks like in our nation. And until we can acknowledge the problem, which is our disobedience, and accept the righteous judgment associated with that behavior, are we going to be unwilling to repent and return to our Elohim, our Father, the Most High, and be forgiven of our rebellious lawlessness that prevails the land, that people do this in his name, and it is not characteristic of who he is at all. And this is a result of that. Now, this is what this looks like when we do that. This is a culmination of these things that are now upon us today. And even with that being said, we have people who are trying to explain this with a different narrative. But the only way that any of this at this time, in this moment, makes sense is to recognize from where it comes. And it is a direct result of our failure to obey what we know from the beginning from our Father Elohim, and our failure to recognize him. And it is a matter of our heart and our condition. And the Father says, at this moment, you must repent in your condition, in your heart, before you begin to address the circumstances that you're now faced with, because they're only going to get worse. Not going to get better. The pandemic is not going away. It is apparent today, at least in the next few days, these fires aren't going anywhere. And certainly the civil unrest that we're now seeing on our streets are results of 400 years of oppression and slavery are not going to be resolved tomorrow. So the one consistent thing that's left is where our salvation actually lies. We need a savior. We need to be delivered. And not in the way that Hollywood has made it with all that theatrical nonsense. Talking in a sober, practical understanding of who our Father that is in heaven is. And he has given us his word with his instructions And we have to develop the ability to hear him because we live on every word that comes out of his mouth. And he has spoken to us for such a time as this. Our inability to listen is how we are in this predicament all at once. There's been a progressive attempt on his part to discipline us and correct us, and we have ignored it to the point where now we get to situations that cannot be ignored or explained. And for those who do try to explain it, their definitions don't fit what we're seeing, the smoke that I'm seeing out in front of my house right now. And the devastation that I'm seeing of people who I consider to be good, blessed people's homes and lives being destroyed. And until we face that reality soberly, we are doomed to repeat the behavior that got us in this predicament in the first place. And that is to find a cause, to get scapegoats, to blame each other, to rely on people other than the ones who can deliver. And this circle arguments that we continue to be in only makes our condition worse because it gives us a sense of hopelessness and dread, which is now permeating people's souls. And once people lose hope, then they simply give up, like we see our politicians giving up on the pandemic and just pretending like it ain't there, because they have no answer for it. And so we're just gonna, well, we're just don't talk about it, we're just gonna act like we're gonna act, we put our head away to go away. Not the answer. What is the answer? Let's have the conversation about what my Father says to us, who speaks to us, who gives us a way out, a way to return to him. It is his grace that he offers us as a means to return to him so that he can deliver us, save us, and bless us in the midst of everything that's happening right now. That's the hope that we have, Tony. I think that's what you're asking me, Tony. I hope I did a good job in the time we have in expressing that.
On the last page of the Old Testament in my Bible, it says, who can endure the day of his coming? I will send my messenger who will prepare the way. When he appears, he will be like a refiner's fire.
That's right.
He will sit as a refiner, the purifier of silver. He will purify. Then the Lord will have men and women who will bring offerings in righteousness, and they will be acceptable to the Lord, as in the days, as in former years. Amen. And that's the day we were in. Before we wrap up, closing thoughts. I'd like one closing thought from each of you, if I could. Bob?
Well, we've talked a lot about fire, and I think that's because it's so visible. But I think that our racial unrest is a fire that is much more dangerous than all the fires combined. And I think that while some fires are undefensible, I think this fire of racial unrest and relationship across our cultures is defensible and can be approached. I think I and each one of us have the power to start and carry out conversations that lead towards love one another, don't push one another away or down, or suppress one another, or oppress one another, but work together. And I believe that's why we're here today as two black men, two white men who have the common heart of let's love one another, let's respect one another, let's forgive one another. And I think that power is greater than all the powers that have led us to this place of social unrest and inequality. And I think that is something that each one of us can do, is make a change in how we treat one another, have conversations that are open, listen to one another. And that can change the whole country. And I think, Leonard, the church has a role in that.
Yes.
And I think the
True
individual,
church.
the churches, have a role in that. And I think it's up to us to stand up and say, let's put that fire out. Let's put that fire out of inequality and racism.
Hatred.
Let's put that one out.
Right.
And we're going to fight that fire.
Yes.
And we have the power through the Holy Spirit to do that.
Thanks, Bob.
I'm glad you said that, Bob, and because there's been a fire burning within the body of ill religion or the churches for a long time, and we haven't prayed or haven't sought the Father's heart in regards to how we have lived out His message, His instruction to the world, and so now it's in your face. So the fires are going to push people into your cities, into your communities. It's amazing that the doors of what we call the church today, many of those buildings are shut down and those doors aren't open. But I pray that there's a response that the church, the ecclesia, hears through the Ruach, the Holy Spirit, the set apart Spirit that's speaking to us today, and especially speaking to those of us that call ourselves His children. We had a little thing today in our earlier meeting where it said, Jesus asked Peter, do you love me? And Peter's response was, yes, I love you. He said, well, feed my sheep. He said, Peter, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know I love you. He said, then feed my lambs. He said, Peter, do you love me? And he said, all right, Father. Okay, Lord, you already know everything. You know all my intentions. So until we become, and I don't want to simplify it, but till we become naked before the Father, in a sense, to become undressed from everything we are and work back up. Because I think it was a response that when Peter finally said, okay, Father, you know what, then go do those things that I told you to do. Feed my lamb, feed my sheep. So I'm going to end with that. I'll pass it to whoever else wants it. We got a great response. So.
Right on. You started to preach a little bit there, Pops.
Yeah, just a little.
A little preaching going on.
Go
All right,
for it,
Uncle Larry.
So, I mean, the one thing that all this has done is brought us to a crisis of care.
Yeah.
And it's exposed how much prior to this that we really didn't care. And we didn't care to know about any of these things. And then we were discomfort when these things were brought to us. And now we're experiencing a crisis that's bringing us to a moment where we have to understand how to care.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way we can really care about these things is to understand that they are important to my Father, that He has spoken to us about them, that He has a response to them, and that we have to implement according to His word, His authority, our response, so that we, in fact, can extend care. So I'm thankful for where we are. The hope is that my Father already has a plan on how to address this. He just got us to care about it. And one of the ways that we care is when we experience pain, suffering, and loss, unfortunately, so that we can really learn to care the way He cares about people. And because He cares about people and because He's faithful, there's always hope in that. But the despair comes when we don't understand or we neglect to care about the things He cares about. And we find ourselves in these circumstances. So on the one hand, it is a tragedy and that lives have to be
Yes, it
lost.
is.
People have to suffer. That's real. And our humanity, I suffer that. But on the other hand, it's a wake-up call for us to care.
There you go.
Mhm.
There you
And
go.
so in our response about caring, this is where we make the difference in our humanity and bless our Father. So I would say thank you for both of those things.
All right. It's my observation that one of the great lies of Western culture, with our wealth and our freedom and our independence and our individualism, is that somehow I can control my own life, that I can be the one who is the savior, who is the God over my own life, that I can determine that I am the one who makes sure my children are fed, that I'm the one to make sure there's a roof over my house. I am the one who deserves X, Y, and Z, that I deserve these things. And in that, we walk around like zombies, and living in that lie. And it takes moments like this, with all that's happening, with literally my state on fire, that we get knocked off balance. We get knocked so far off balance that we realize, oh my gosh, I'm not in control. I'm not in charge, and I am not God. And it's these times when we cry out. I pray that we all cry out. I pray that I cry out. God, I need you. I cannot do this alone. I need my family of faith, you all, and I definitely need God. And I step out in the world. And right now, when I'm on the phone with people, everyone is desperately trying to find a greater meaning to what's going on. They're trying to find a greater explanation for it. They're trying to use some political story to justify their position, or to explain what's happening, or to blame someone for it, when in reality, what God is calling us to be is to be the heralds, to stand on the wall, to be the overseers, and to cry out and say, we see what is happening, return to the Creator, know that you are needy, that you are children, and your Father's lap is open, inviting you to come into his arms. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your time. This is the first episode of the Portland Stories podcast. Portland Stories podcast comes out of a diverse community of men that have been meeting for decades in Northeast Portland. We are hoping to bring you conversations about faith, race, justice, and God. And this is the first episode, but we hope for many more. And we hope that those of you who are listening will come back and participate with us in these conversations. Gentlemen, you honor my life, and you are a blessing to me. Thank you so much, and everyone bless you.
Blessings.